Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. And the reason why I say that is because it depends on what time of the day you actually watch this. Because we're shooting it in the morning, but when you watch it might be in the evening. So, you know. And today we are here in Finsbury Park. And today is probably one of the first of the redoing of what we started. How long ago was it?
Oh, long time ago, just after lockdown. Actually, during lockdown.
Yeah, a couple of years.
Yeah.
And so we're trying to get things back up, starting. We want more people because it's fantastic because of the interaction with more people.
Yes, of course.
You know.
That's an ideal that we'll aim for.
We'll do that. And so, Graham, what's in your mind today?
Well, I've just been focusing on the massive amount of propaganda that's been going on through the media and the confusion it's left people in.
Wow.
I mean, as an example, I things were getting through to people on these Palestinian marches and on the attacks on the people who went on them and that. And however awful it was, there was a certain understanding which had been lost in the both in the under the Johnson period and also in that COVID period, which really was very technical and hard to understand. A world pandemic, which happens like Halley's Comet once every 50 years or more. But we're back to something sort of where we sort of did understand and where we do understand, and it's becoming the lines were quite clear to us. The terrible genocide and massacre of I don't even want to call them Palestinians because it's they're human beings. I mean, it's funny because on this subject immediately, our detractors, my detractors, would say to immediately, the massacre of Palestine, what about October, blah, 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 and get caught in this ping pong match, right? When in actual fact, I remember maybe 15 years ago going to visit Buchenwald, the Nazi concentration camp in the city of Weimar above the hill, and it was, the thing that struck me is it's not the massacre of Jewish people, but the massacre of human beings, the deliberate destruction of fellow human beings. And the thing that I've never forgotten was, I was getting more and more depressed when I saw the exhibits. I don't want to make it sound like walking around a museum with exhibits. It physically was like that, but emotionally it wasn't like that at all. It was horrendous.
An important point. Somebody said to me that it was Europeans that killed.
Well, you see, that's why I'm using the word human beings.
Right, it was European. But it looks like they're blaming Arabs now for the situation.
Yes, basically the whole idea has been racialized in the same way as the fascists, or not all the fascists, but certain types of fascists, i.e. the Nazi type of fascists, used the idea of Semitism and anti-Semitism to blame Easterners, i.e. the Russian Orthodox Ashkenazis, as being somehow racially different from white Europeans. Now, those same Ashkenazis and maybe even the Sephardim as well, and all the people who of the Jewish faith, unfortunately, have been co-opted into an idea of whiteness, which up until 1945 didn't exist. And the same people that persecuted them for being racially, whatever this means, different, have now that the other Semites, the Arabs, right, and by extension all dark-skinned people, African, Asian, South American, have become monsters, the enemy, who are capable of being demonized and destroyed.
That word anti-Semitic, as far as I know, actually means anti-Arab.
Yeah, of course it does.
Right? So it's been hijacked.
Yes, I guess.
To mean, no, not mean. People believe, right? It's like somebody says a word. If you choose any word, all it is a word. But people have attached meanings to it, right? For instance, the N-word or whatever, swear word. But it's what people attach. So with anti-Semitic, that word itself, anti-Semitic, it actually, as far as I know, it means anti-Arab, right? But there's a new meaning. Just the same way like the British flag, if you see certain people waving it, it actually has a meaning of being, is it far right?
Indubitably. What else? And this is, and unless we think about Billy Bragg and his revisiting of English nationalism, but
actually, let me drift you onto that Conservative meeting in where was it? And they tried to cancel it.
Oh, in Belgium.
Yeah.
Yes.
What do you know about
the white Belgians were against Nigel Farage, who's standing up for the American white race in Alabama.
But what is really scary is that we had conservative politicians going over there and actually supporting and spouting this far right. And another strange thing, and a lot of people don't they haven't clicked. Most of these politicians who are in UKIP and these extreme, they originally were conservatives.
Of course, Nigel Farage was a conservative for 20 years. UKIP was run by a man called Alan Sked. He was very right-wing and nationalist and that. No, probably not the brightest shelling in the slot machine. Yeah. But nevertheless, this was like a party which was against the common market, which unfortunately even some left-wing people, they call themselves Lexiteers, fell into the trap of. I mean, it was a way of thinking of the European common market, which I think was still chauvinistic and petty, but actually had some kind of economic logic about it, some kind of logic. But when Farage manipulated and booted out Alan Sked, who's still very bitter now, and took over, right? So basically this man who's creating and recreating himself, but has never won an election. It's this con man.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, the name Farage, French Huguenot, I think, who claimed asylum in maybe 2 centuries ago after maybe the persecution, due to their religious sort of beliefs, i.e. Protestantism.
You know, another fascinating fact about Farage is that the only political job he had was actually he was a MP representing us in the European Union.
Well, so was Boris Johnson's father. I mean, Boris Johnson went to school in Brussels. That's why he speaks very good French. He was another opportunist on a much higher level and with much more power and money and influence and backing. But nevertheless, the same sort of cut from the same cloth.
Let me jump to some politics today. So yesterday there was a vote on the Rwanda bill. What do you think about that?
Well, it's morally awful, right? And we know that that the safe passage should be allowed for human beings facing persecution. But unfortunately, like Keir Starmer and the new Labour Party don't want to talk about these things because they want to pander to the Daily Mail and the and the Telegraph and things like that, and they want to be the safe pair of hands that so that they can say the Sun what won it, like they did with Blair. And but he himself knows that really the answer is safe passage. And the thing that's most glaring about it is the Afghan interpreters, safe passage. So that hypocrisy during the time of the Taliban takeover, right, where suddenly lots of these sort of Afghan interpreters were called heroes and were pledged protection, and that were just dumped and used, just like many of the darker skinned people in the British Empire forces throughout history, used and dumped.
You see, the other thing about the Rwanda thing, it's like Brexit. So the British public is led to believe that the immigrants is the cause of all their problems. Now,
I think that is a universal trope used by nationalists everywhere. So I think we can look at this as a universal trope. The whole concept of the nation state is based on foreigners and natives. The populists, right? The Steve Bannonites talk about nativists and foreigners, others, the othering. But of course, when Bannon and Trump and Farage and Le Pen and all the other misfits, manipulators and semi-psychotics mention this strange dichotomy, I noticed that the misuse of the word nativist, because none of them talk about the First Nation natives, or the Aboriginal natives, or the Maori natives.
Or even in the UK, we had the Celtic.
The Celtic natives.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you know, each region. But yeah, back to Rwanda, right? So let's say they get through and they deport people to Rwanda. Here's what. The problems will still be the same. You still have problems.
It's not meant to be racism is meant to divide working class people. It's an ideological tool. It's not meant to be logical. It's a cruel. It's based emotionally on cruel bigotry, pandering to the sentiments of anger caused by fear, and the fear of people who've been trained into a belief that the habits which they now have historically always been the same, whether it's fish and chips or millstone grit or vodka. They have always existed ahistorically throughout history, and is unchangeable and is part of their identity. And this is being taken away from them.
So you get to you get to deport the immigrants, which is the major problem, but you still got a problem with the health service. You still can't get a dentist. Education system is still in a mess. The doctors are overworked, right? The national health, was it 8 million appointments?
But what you've done is you've started the beginning of a hysteria. Yeah, you've crossed the Rubicon of blaming the victim, and now you blame another group of victims and you deport them. Do you see where I'm heading to?
Where are you headed?
1937?
A war? No. A world war?
Mass deportation.
Okay, tell me about that.
Donald Trump talks about it. Mass deportation. He gives the game away, and being psychotic, and illiterate, he's not able to actually even pretend to be somewhat sophisticated and polite about it in a Farage-like way. He actually calls South American and Mexican migrants and other migrants too as criminals and rapists, and so he's given the game away of what the Tories themselves, whether they believe it or not, wish to get people to believe that they are the source of the ills magically. Fascism is magic. Extreme nationalism is magic. Religion in its extreme forms is magic.
So in the UK,
magic thinking.
Two of the problems, we have many problems, but two of the problems, one is actually in the military. They haven't got enough people signing up for the military. And another place they have a problem is actually old age people healthcare, right? So as we got a demographics, and probably in 10, 20 years time, I'll be part of the demographic, where we've got an aging population and they need to be looked after. There's nobody in this country, and I'm going to add the Gen Z. Go on.
Right-wing politicians, particularly right-wing populist politicians, are not only not versed in science, social science, statistics,
economics.
Economics,
Simply
yes, even capitalist economics, which they pretend to understand. They are not versed in the logic which even Aristotle would talk about, or Plato. They do not understand this. What they do is they live for the day, and day by day they use bigotry. They use the simple dog training,
dog whistle,
of reward and punishment. Reward for good behavior, i.e. bribery, and punishment for bad behavior, victimhood. So if there were no foreigners, they would create some.
So let's move on to the Gen Z, which is the
After all, the trade unions suddenly become foreigners whenever they demand better wages or better conditions for their members. They are turned into foreigners as well.
All right, let's move on.
Aliens.
Let's add the Gen Z into that. So this is the new teenagers now turning now mature 25-year-old to 35-year-old. Right now, they don't want to get their hands dirty, right? And here's what they've got: they're in debt. Their education.
Sorry, can you explain this again? Not wanting to get their hands dirty.
Well, they think to themselves.
They don't want to work, do they? Because these young people, they just look at their phones.
Yes, and
so how come you've fallen into that trap unconsciously? Their ageism, like racism, does not exist because elderly people are not different from young people, because many of them live in the same family home, parents, grandparents and grandchildren, and when they're poor, they pass their poverty down, and when they're rich, they pass their wealth down. So we come back to the situation of class. The main arbiter of all societies, class, wealth and privilege. Poor people start out poor, go through poverty and end up poor and have poor children, usually.
There's something amazing you said last time we spoke, which was about Notting Hill Gate. The middle classes are now falling, right? 100 grand a year, for some people, they're still poor. And in fact, the government are still giving those people subsidies for childcare, right? But you gave a good explanation, an economic and mathematical, about the interest rate in relation to the interest rate going up. So the mortgage has gone up, prices has gone up. So the super duper car that they got parked outside, if it's on regular monthly payment, that's gone up as well with the interest rate. Food's gone up, and so they are now falling into the...
Yes, because as Marx said, there isn't, and Marx and Engels said, right, when he explained real economics, right, there is no such thing as a middle class. There's a ruling class and a working class, and in more advanced capitalist societies, there is the formation of a more privileged working class that is misnamed the middle class to fool everybody. In fact, in America, the working class people who pick up the garbage and clear the garbage and sweep the streets and work on the fire hydrants, they are labelled middle class. So it just shows you the manipulation of words. I even use these words, but I know while I'm doing it that it doesn't make sense, because obviously during a boom period, right, in the 60s and 70s, many of the wealthy working class people started to get some white-collar jobs, better education, going to university, and their place was their places which they had formerly on building sites and factories and the buses and the health service was taken up by black and Asian working class and Irish working class, who were put in the same category.
And talking about the 30s, so there was a depression, and then there was a crash.
A crash, like the one we had earlier.
Which came first? Was it the depression or the crash?
Well, I'm not sure what the word depression is. A recession makes sense economically, but depression is a word that's often used. It's taken, I think, I might be wrong here, but I think it's taken from psychology to explain how people felt during the 1930s and during all recessions.
And today...
And inflation too, probably.
Yes, I've been watching.
So therefore, high inflation could actually cause a depression without causing a recession.
Well, I'm watching more people out.
Although I'm not, I don't have enough knowledge to know whether that's true or not.
Well, I am seeing more people out on the streets. I'm seeing a couple more people sleeping in Finsbury Park. Oh, by the way, we're in Finsbury Park. We're in North London. So those of you around the world, right? So when you see this around the world, whether you're in America, the Caribbean, Africa, or what have you, we're in Finsbury Park, which is North London. And you can actually do it on Google Maps.
And you can remember, you can get some of the world's finest dope in Finsbury Park. Remember?
Yeah. Me, when he means dope, stupid people like me and him.
Yeah, what I mean is dopes. I mean dopes. I'm not talking about Oregon, and I'm not talking about Germany at the moment, or even Holland, or
Mongo Mongo
I'm
is
talking-
hungry.
Yeah.
Anyway, back
And
to-
I'm certainly not talking about those guys in Eton that have that they once they've eaten those bowls of funny stuff and they get kind of high, you know, while someone else is writing out their exams.
Yes, that is true. That is true. Right. So back to
Yeah.
So back to recession, and back to
See the film The Riot Club.
right, and the food. Okay, and the food banks. So we got more food banks. We got more people sleeping on the street. The economy. So the economy grew by 0.1%. Right. For me, where I'm at, I'm in a recession. So whoever that 0.1% is. But here's the thing. So if it grew by 0.1% and the prices rose by 10%, where are we? For me, we are in a recession.
We're 9/10 more miserable than we were before.
Right. So,
Hey, you sound like a mathematician.
right. Some people might say, or I might say, we are in an apocalyptic situation. So we got people who can't afford to eat. There's food banks. People have been kicked out on the streets because their rent has gone up like 2 and 3 times in a year, right?
Private rents have always been good for the Tories because most of the Tory politicians are also landlords, so they will never
Go
commit
against
to
anything
rent
about-
control, and without rent control, we have even no fault evictions, which is not even to do with rent and or to do with capitalism at all. It's to do with being greedy and vicious and discriminatory.
Now back to the Gen Z, right? And the Gen Z generation, the people who are 25 to 35, around that age group, they can never, ever buy a place.
No. Well, the post-war period, right, was the period of growth and of the welfare state under Keynesianism. And Margaret Thatcher, who took over from Keith Joseph because he didn't succeed, brought out the idea of monetarism, which didn't actually work and this press would know about that. But what it certainly did is it certainly rolled back the state, as they said, and it certainly pushed those post-war welfare reforms back to the pre-war period so the pre-Keynesian economists who were totally free market, a la Adam Smith
Institute. It's an
Institute.
Adam Smith Institute.
with bow tie.
Yeah.
Like Mr. Peary with a bow tie. They're very intelligent people that have bow ties.
All right. How many wars have we got? How many hot? Yeah, this is really amazing. How many? They call it hot wars.
Hot wars.
How many hot wars have we got going at the moment?
Hot war.
Well, we've got one in Ukraine.
If you're happy and you know it, kill your friends.
Oh my God.
If you're happy. How can you? Are you disgusting? I shall report you to the Daily Mail immediately. No, well, I think there's lots of wars though that are not focused on. How many wars are there?
Well,
Sudan, Burma, Myanmar.
yeah.
There's Palestine, Ukraine, Mali.
All right. So by your reckoning, it's probably about 5 to 10 of them.
Well, that's the ones we know about. I'm
Yeah.
sure there's a lot more that we don't, because just like the focus of the camera, the focus of the press, particularly the Western press, the 3 powerful press agencies, which is Reuters, United Press International, and Agence Presse France,
Focus.
on issues and can drop those issues overnight. After all, remember, not very long ago, the focus was on the massacre of Palestinians and selling weapons to Israel to allow them to break international law and massacre those Palestinians. All of a sudden, we're back to the Cold War period where there's this kind of phony war between sort of Iran and Israel to cover it up. So is the massacre not happening? Has it stopped? Is it now? Is everyone happy? Is Gaza a land of happiness and what's happened? Has it disappeared? Like has Afghanistan suddenly become wonderful? Is Gaza never going to be mentioned again?
34,000 people and more,
No,
and
34,000
those still
people.
buried under the rubble.
Ah, right. But how do you? But on the other hand, the press doesn't talk about them as if they were people. The press talks about them as if they were ants because they're brown-skinned. You see, if a white person on holiday gets attacked by a crocodile, which is an act of God,
Makes news.
right? It's a terrible monstrosity. They talk to the people, they talk to the families, they explain, and you see, they make
And they
make out
even
that a human being.
and they
has
even
been
talk
attacked.
to the crocodile.
They talk to the crocodile. Yeah, and they talk to the
But
crocodile.
if you're brown,
But if you're brown, well, okay.
if they're brown, they put you down.
Yeah, no, they brought it upon themselves, either through laziness or all being terrorists. I mean, I thought that these 33,000 people with living in the rubble are now all covered in hummus. These are terrible. They are all by Hamas, including the babies.
Actually, one of the crazy things that's happening at the moment is Haiti. Haiti's in a real mess. You know, with it's complete chaos that we don't know. It's a war with itself. But
Haiti. That's interesting. There was a democratic socialist who flew into Haiti and won a huge mandate and gave those poor people hope, right? Like Salvador, like they got with Salvador Allende. These people in Haiti had a lot of hope. He was a Catholic priest. His name was Father Bertrand Aristide, a very peaceful man, and he just probably like Paul Bogle would have done, would have liked to renationalize the industries from U.S. hands and exploitative manipulation, and probably close down the sex industry from Miami and Texas, and actually helped the people there in the way that Toussaint Louverture, right, would have actually been very proud of, and we would have seen a different story. But he was overthrown. Yes. So now extreme racial stereotypes are used on Haiti, the first free slave state in the world, right, that successfully freed themselves, and now they are used as an example of the dark-skinned people killing one another just like they do in Finsbury Park or Brixton.
all right, so we'll make this our last
Or
subject.
Chicago.
Make this our last subject.
Mhm.
Elections or erections or elections.
Erections. No, I'd rather be run over by a tractor. Thank you very much. Oh, wow! That's not a tractor. I paid all that money. That's a goddamn JCB. I think I resign.
Yeah, but Yeah. How many Conservative MPs have resigned? One called Sexton.
Oh, today there's been another one.
Okay.
Who phoned? Somewhere in Lancashire, he has been finally forced to. Well, he's been suspended. And suspended animation, I suppose, or as they say in the theatre, suspension of disbelief. He is left because, as a Times newspaper quoted, he phoned up his one of like his staff, elderly. That just adds to the moral panic. So sorry, there was no moral panic. Oh, and he asked her to. He said he was being, I don't know, like kidnapped or something. He didn't explain because he doesn't need to explain. And so she gave money out of her pocket, and it was reimbursed through the funds that were given to him. Now, I think Steve Bannon went to jail in the USA for actually asking people to give money for a wall which wasn't going to be built.
Yeah.
But this Tory MP, who was a wonderful person, and remember, there's no Johnson to actually protect him anymore. This man has well. I can't say. I'm not allowed to say because I could be in court for. I don't know. Somehow I don't know. I don't know anything.
Embezzlement.
No. This is a word which is hanging about in the air.
Okay.
So he's asked for money, but of course. It may be that he didn't. It may be that he's completely innocent, and that basically he was kidnapped by Al Rayner in a sex party, and that he was in her council flat, and who knows.
So back to the election. Some people saying it's a foregone conclusion. And the Conservatives are falling apart, or are they?
Rupert Murdoch's not falling apart. That's.
And how old is he now?
When we talk about the election, well, we're talking about his son. What his son? This is one of his sons.
Okay.
Because he's got two sons, and one of them hates him. But
Wow.
the son, the sycophantic son, who worships him, who's taken over the empire, who's the next sort of through nepotism. So because the power of the right-wing press, we really can't really say very much, because it does look very good about the polls at the moment. It does very good, yeah. Although the polls, hopefully if we were back in the common market, the polls could come back. But the polls, POLLS, do look quite good. And it seems as if the ex-Tories will be sort of Labour in small towns and Lib Dems in villages. And the inner cities that were socialist will probably be independent and green.
What about these fringe people? These Tice. What's Tice?
Tice. Well, I think the Reform Party is a private company owned by Nigel Farage, and this man is a CEO. So he's he can.
And how many groups of Conservatives are there over here? Isn't there something called the Real Conservative and
the Real Conservatives and the New Conservatives and the
they're all messed up.
The genuine ones.
All right.
And there was Oswald Mosley Conservative.
And Toby Robertson's Conservative. All right. So let's conclude. So, I mean, I know you're a busy man and you interact with a lot of social things. And he just happened that the lawnmower guy just happened to be driving his lawnmower in the background.
Can we conclude soon, because I wish to go to the toilet? That's
All right. Okay. So is there anybody you like to boost up, because there's events and stuff that you attend and
Boost
stuff?
up.
So is there anybody?
For what it's worth, I say vote Green, because they've stood that generally, not all of them, but generally, they've actually quite socialist, and they've stood firm on the ceasefire, the most important thing. And I think we have a huge environmental problem which we've neglected, and this two-party race between the extreme right-wing fascistic conservatives and the more sort of liberal conservatives, right? It's just like two arses of the same cheek.
All right. So it's goodbye from him.
And goodbye from me. And him.
And we'll see you next time. This is Red 5599. Go kick the ball over there for them.